a thin ghost of music in the spinet. I cannot sail your seas, I cannot wander your hill lands, or your cornlands, or your valleys ever again, nor share the battle yonder, where the young knights of broken squadron rally. Only sit quiet, while my mind remembers the beauty of fire from the beauty of embers.
This is the only case that I've ever done on this channel that I was hesitant to do. The reasonings, because of moral decisions, business decisions. This right here started it all. Personal relationships, professional relationships, all at stake. All because of a murder of a 10-year-old girl named Joline Witt on July 27th, 1997 from Muncy, Pennsylvania. This case has it all. You have a grieving sister who wants answers.
They were just, hoping that it wasn't her body.
You have truths. You have deceptions. You have confessions. You have sins. But out of all that, what we had the most of is a mystery. And it was my job to figure it out. And I believe I have. Of course, they're going to interview Steve. But that doesn't take place right away. Because when they're interviewing Linda, hey, who could do this to you? We want to know your past relationships. We need to know these people. She says, hey, I really didn't date too many people. These are the people. They check them out. But there's one guy in particular whose name is Alan. Alan and me, yeah, we kind of hooked up one time. He used to live here in Bruce's house with Bruce up to just a couple weeks ago. And then he moved out. You know what's interesting about that? Is when they asked her, is there anybody that we should talk to? She said, Alan. And they said, why? They said, was Joline close to him? She said, yeah, they got along. He liked her, played with her. So what does Kevin do next? He goes and interviews Alan. Alan lives 15, 20 minutes away in a trailer. They go and interview him that morning. Where were you last night? Oh, I was out drinking. Oh, I was really, really drunk. Scale of 1 to 10, I was like a 9. If I was a 10, I'd have been passed out. I was about a 9. Actually thinking we got kicked out of a bar. What bar did you go to? Went to a few bars. Went to Mayor's Bar. Went to the Finish Line. Went to Brandon Cafe. Who were you with? I was with a girl named Monica. A guy named Steve. Okay. Why don't you come down to the police station so we can interview you further? Sure, no problem. Alan goes to the police station. He's there with 2 troopers and Kevin. Troopers are there to help. Kevin's got a lot on his plate. Okay? They start asking him about Joline. And I would be remiss if I didn't actually read the exact words that he used. Alan says to Kevin, he knew Joline since she was a little girl. She was the silent type, but always mischievous. These are quotes. She used to have the cutest little laugh. She was always playing around with the other kids and him. She was a sweet little girl. She was an all-around good kid. She never needed to be spanked. You see anything wrong with those statements? Maybe not off the surface. But what sticks out? This is a few hours after she's missing. Do you notice anything? Somebody there got it. He's speaking about her in the past tense. She was. Now, a good detective will pick up on that. Guess who picked up on that? Kevin. So, he then asks her, and this is noted in the police report. It says, Officer Note, to tell him what happened to Joline. His entire demeanor changed. He would no longer look at him, but would rather look down at the table and slouched over. Kevin asked Alan, is Joline okay? Alan looked directly at him and said nothing. After a few minutes, he said, I hope so. I then asked him to tell me what he could about Joline. He said that he has known her since she was a little girl, and she was the silent type, but always mischievous. She used to have the cutest little laugh. She was always playing around with the other kids and him. She was a sweet little girl. She was an all-around good kid. She never needed to be spanked. Officer's note. When I asked him to tell me about Joline, his entire demeanor changed. He no longer looked straight at me, but rather down at the table, slouched over. I also noted that he used the past tense with his descriptive terms. I then asked him, is Joline okay? He looked right at me and said nothing at first. He just stared, and then after a brief pause said, I hope so. So there you have it. There you have Kevin interview with Alan and how Alan and Steve are now tied into this. They go and interview Steve. He was supposedly with Alan that night. Steve's not as cooperative as Alan is. And in fact, they get his, you want to get a statement right away. You want to lock somebody into a statement. And they did. They interviewed him a couple of times before he quit cooperating. Same with Alan. But each time, their timelines don't match up. What they say they did. Steve says, hey, after we got drunk at this bar in Williamsport, I said, I don't have enough gas money to take you home, Alan. Because remember, Alan lives in Allenwood, which is close to Muncy. But that's where Steve lives. So that doesn't make any sense. But Steve says, I don't know where Alan goes, but we separate. I go and I knock on this guy's door, a friend. He didn't answer. I fell asleep on his porch. Then I woke up. I went in my car and I slept until 6:30 in the morning, and then I go home. Well, remember the sewer worker. The sewer worker did see him around that time, 6:30, on, I believe it's West Water Street on his way, and Steve lived, I believe, on Penn Street, which is right there. So that kind of lines up. Alan says, yeah, I didn't go home with Steve. What happened was some guy I run into at the bar said he knew me from a river lot and he could take me home. He was going that way. I don't know his name. He drove a Thunderbird, and he actually dropped me off, and I had to walk the rest of the way to my house. Do you see any problems with that? You see how they are trying to separate themselves from each other? So basically, Steve, he has no alibi from 2 o'clock when the bars closed, kicked him out, and 6 o'clock when he goes home and he's seen by the sewer worker.
Dave, an employee of the Muncy Borough Maintenance Crew, came to the police station and provided the following information. Dave said he had come out on the morning of Sunday, 27 July 1997 for his weekend duty. He was at the sewage lift station on West Water Street near the Muncy Creek Township line at approximately 06:45 hours. Dave stated that while he was there, he observed a brown or tan Ford Futura being operated by a white male, 5'8", 200 pounds, stocky build, short dark hair. He stated that he thought that the driver was acting nervous and kept looking into the back seat. I later met with Dave and conducted a follow-up interview on the information that was originally taken by Carl of Muncy Township Police Department. Dave said that when he saw this vehicle, it was traveling east on West Water Street coming into the borough from Montgomery area. Dave said that he did not really think a lot about that until he saw the same car down at the scene on Grant Street later in the day. He further stated that he knows the driver of the vehicle from meeting him at the Turkey Hill Market in Muncy. He said that he had met the driver while he was recovering from his motorcycle accident. At the time, the driver's head was still shaved from injuries he had sustained during the accident. He had stitches and a large laceration on the left side of his head. Dave further said that he sees this vehicle fairly often because it drives by his house on South Washington Street. He does not know the name of the driver, but he is sure that it is the same man that he met at the Turkey Hill Market in Muncy. He is also certain that this vehicle is the same vehicle that he saw on Water Street on Sunday, 27 July 1997, and at the house on Grant Street later that same day. Officer's note: the vehicle description and driver description fits that of Steve. Further, Steve did have a motorcycle accident earlier this year and did sustain a head injury as described by Dave. In addition, Steve would also travel South Washington Street and pass by Dave's house on the way to his own home on East Penn Street.
Alan, on the other hand, he can't name the guy that took him home. And the police looked for this guy and they couldn't find him either. But there was occupants at Alan's trailer, so they know what time he got home. His girlfriend says it was around 4:30. Same time Alan says, 4:30. Well, there were two people laying on the living room floor at that time when Alan came home. They said it was more like 6:30, something like it was getting light out. So there's contradicting statements there as well. So those are the facts when it becomes to Alan and Steve right now. Okay? Those are facts. And they can't be brushed aside. But let's focus back into the house. Because this has parallels to the John Benet Ramsey case. Right? Could an outsider come into a house, kidnap a child, and leave? Yes. It's been happened. Elizabeth's smart. It happens. Can an adult inside that house be responsible? Absolutely. That's happened in the past too. And in fact, I think the statistics will show that that is more of a probability than an outsider coming into a house, especially a populated house, and doing that.
As a law enforcement officer, it would be someone in the home. Because normally, even just like domestic violence, right? It's or a woman who's murdered and has a boyfriend or something. It's always someone very close to them. You start that way and then you go down. So it'd be everybody in the home. And then once that's all said and done, there's no lead there. People pass polygraphs. Obviously, back then they probably didn't do that, but I'm saying now, then you go outsource. Okay, what else? Was there something going on in the neighborhood? Is there another kid that was missing? Did somebody else have their house, a door was ajar in the middle of the night, or they caught someone prowling in their yard? We don't know that. Some people focus on the tunnel vision, not that it's not hard to do, but if you can't just stop here.
Right.
You got to keep going. Because at the end of the day, somebody wants an answer for what happened.
Sure. So, you have 3 adults in that house. You have Linda, Jolene's mom. You have Bruce, Jolene's uncle. And you have Bruce's wife, Tina, Jolene's aunt. They have to be looked at hard. And they were. So much so that Tina and Linda were hypnotized to try to get information out of them that maybe they couldn't recall. Most people, I think, believe, and the district attorney at the time, and I believe police officers themselves believe that that is the case. It's somebody from inside that house. So you narrow it down. It has to be one of the 3 adults. The kids couldn't do. Why? Kids can murder, sure. But the body's found September 6th, 1997, 20 miles away. Okay? There's no kid in that house that is capable of doing that. So that deduces the number of suspects in the house to 3. Now, can we deduce that further? I believe you can. Because what can we tell about the body dump location? One is she was found 250 feet from the road. Now, I was just at this road a couple days ago. I pulled off and I walked it. That's a long walk off of the road. Remember what I said? A lot of people were wondering, why did I give Jolene's weight, 120 pounds? For this very reason. Somebody, or some people, carried her or drug her 250 feet from that main horseshoe curve. Now, why that area? I don't know why that area, but I know why that location. If you're on that road, it has a good pull off. I mean, you can pull off of that road and not be on the road. Maybe they were familiar with that location. I don't know. So the body dump location is about 20 miles away. It's in a wooded area. We have to determine, that's important for the timeline. Who, if we're still looking at 3 people inside the house, 3 adults, how long it would take if there was time to do it. But what was found at this body dump location? Well, Jolene's body was so badly decomposed, you can imagine. It's July and August. She laid out there in September. They had to use dental records to identify her. But one thing is without a doubt, and that was that she was nude. That is so very important. Why, you ask? Let's say that there was an accident in the house. Joline wakes up and she peed herself. And mom flips out and beats her to death. And they decide to discard the body. Would the body be nude? Not necessarily. So, because she's nude, I think you can start deducing things. Number one, when we look at greed, sex, or revenge, what does this fall under? Because remember, most murders fall under those three categories. Yes, there's subcategories, and there's an outlier or two, but for most, it's greed, sex, or revenge. There's no doubt that this is a sexually motivated crime. Some key clues, I think, are found at the body dump location. And the obvious is that Joline's body, she was naked.
Right.
Does that immediately tell you anything?
Yeah, sexually motivated crime.
Okay. Somebody's not kidnapping her for ransom. Somebody's not just kidnapping her and then an accident happens and then they discard her. No, she's nude. She is nude. That's a sexually motivated crime. They can't tell whether she was sexually assaulted. They can't even tell how she was murdered. Coroner said violent homicide. How does he know it's violent? There's no nicks on the ribs from a knife. There is no blunt force trauma that you can tell. So it leaves really two possibilities. She's strangled or smothered. And we'll get into that because that is how the district attorney said that she died. At least that's what it's quoted in the newspaper as saying. So if we're still looking inside that house and we've deduced now that it's not greed and it's not revenge, because remember, revenge could play into it. There was a custody battle going on. Lindsay Witt, some would say, could have done this. He has an alibi. He's at work. Okay, he didn't do it. So we can eliminate revenge. It's sex. It's a sexually motivated crime. Whoever did this did it because of sex. So I think we can eliminate Tina, and now we can eliminate Linda. And there's only one left inside that house who could have done it, and that is Bruce the uncle. So you have to focus on Bruce the uncle. Now remember the red flag that threw up about making the coffee. Why are you making coffee? You don't know that she's gone. Unless victimology, well, no, he's not a victim. Well, some would say that he is. Suspectology. Did he normally just was he good on 2 hours sleep? Because that's what he would have had. That bothers me. You just had 2 hours of sleep after drinking, and you're going to get up and start making coffee to stay up the rest of the day? I mean, I assume that that's the reason he's making coffee. Maybe that's a bad assumption. But most people, and you get up in the morning, you start drinking coffee, you don't go back to bed. So that bothers me. And he's making that coffee according to his own testimony and Linda's before he even knows Joline's missing.
Interview of Bruce Longnecker. On Sunday, 27 July 1997 at approximately 0620 hours, I conducted an interview with Bruce Longnecker Sr., 1 Grant Street, Muncy. The interview was conducted at his residence in his kitchen. He stated that on Saturday, 26 July 1997, he and his family had been out yard sailing for part of the day. They had returned to the Grant Street residence at just prior to dark, which he judged to be 20 hours. 2000 hours is 8 o'clock p.m. and had not left the house after that. Bruce said the children were playing around inside the house, and at approximately 2200 hours, his 10-year-old niece, Joline Faye Witt, had come into the kitchen and kissed his mother, Linda, goodnight. Bruce and his wife, Christina, and his sister, Linda, were playing a game of Scrabble in the kitchen. Bruce stated that sometime between 02 and 0230 hours, they had finished the game and started to get ready to retire for the night. He then said that they had gone around the house and double-checked all exterior doors to the house and was absolutely certain that all doors were closed and locked, double-checked. He then went into his elaborate detail about why he makes sure all the doors were closed due to potential fire hazards. After checking the door, Bruce and Tina went upstairs and Linda laid down on the couch in the living room to go to sleep. Also in the living room on the love seat was Linda's other daughter, Cassie Witt, aged 11. Bruce said that he and his wife were awakened by his sister Linda at approximately 0430 hours, later changed to 0400 hours. When he awoke, he said that Linda was ranting and raving because when she is excited, she stutters and mumbles, and you have to get her to calm down before you can understand her. After she calmed down, so he could understand her, Linda told him she woke to go to the bathroom and found the front door standing wide open, and she came to get him, saying that she was afraid someone was in the house. He said that he got bullets for his gun and loaded his .38 caliber Rossi revolver and began to check the house for intruders. While checking the house, they discovered that 2 other doors were open in the house. This would be the outside door leading onto Grant Street and the back sliding glass doors that lead to the back deck. Bruce stated that these doors were not only unlocked, but also standing open. While explaining this, he was also showing me which doors he meant. The door leading into Grant Street would be the outside door. It was noted that once inside this door, from the outside, you would have to have entered another door to actually gain access to the house. Bruce stated that those 2 doors were still closed and locked. One is the door to Bruce's office, and the other would be the second door leading into the kitchen. He stated that after they did not find any intruders in the house, he told Linda to check on the kids, and he went to make coffee in the kitchen. While he was making the coffee, he heard one of the women yell downstairs saying that they could not find Joline. He stopped making coffee and began to search for Joline. Bruce said Linda panicked and became hysterical. Bruce kept telling her to calm down and look for Joline. He said that they had checked the whole house from top to bottom, including the attic and basement, but did not find her. Bruce said that he then went outside and checked the cars, including the trunks, and the area around the house. Linda then called Joline's father, Lindsay, at the Williamsport home where he works. Bruce said that she had to wait for him to come to the phone because he was on break and someone had to go and get him. She then told them that it was an emergency.
Does he already subconsciously know that it's going to be a long day because he's involved? Yeah, could be, right? Could be. So if it's somebody inside the house, we've got it narrowed down to Bruce. Now, let's look at offenders outside the house. A random person. Could a random person just have come into that house, taken her? A random. Doesn't know the people. Doesn't know the Witts. Doesn't know the Longneckers. Yes, it's possible, but it's not probable. Why? 1, the doors supposedly locked and double checked. 2, think about Cassie Witt, aged 11. Only 1 year of difference. She is in the living room, right by the front door. Why wasn't she taken? If an outside offender who purpose was sex, because remember, we've deduced that. So now not only are we looking for an outside offender, we're looking for an outside offender who is random, doesn't know, and has a sexual proclivity to young women. Well, if he doesn't know them, why not take Cassie Witt? She's the same age. It's easier. You don't have to navigate around in the dark in a house that you don't know anything about. See how we can now eliminate an outside offender? Now, let's talk about an outside offender who knew Joe, right? Because whoever this offender is, if it's not Bruce, let's say we're just putting him on the back burner for a second, this person bypassed an easy target. Yes, her mom was sleeping there, but upstairs you have 2 adults. You go up, you traverse these steps, go up, take a 10-year-old child who's in bed with somebody else. Remember, she's not in a bed alone. She's in there with her 6-year-old cousin. And take her. I mean, to me, that makes more sense than an outside offender who doesn't know the house. Now, Alan and Steve, let's go back to them. Do they know the house? Yes, Alan lived there. Steve is the uncle. He's been there. Do they know the victim? Yes, we've established. Both know Joline. Because remember, this person targeted her. There's other kids in that house. To the bedroom and
she was
grabbed her.
targeted. It's
Sure.
victimology, man.
Sure.
101. Like, she was targeted.
In fact, there was another kid sleeping in the same bed, but they chose her. There's a reason she's chosen. It's not at random. Okay? So, I think out of the billions of people in the world, thousands of people in Muncy, hundreds of people that are known, we narrowed that all down to, in my mind, 3 people. And for good reason. Now, we didn't even get to what happened after the funeral. Because what happens after the funeral really raises an eyebrow in one of these 3 individuals who is responsible. Something happens where Bruce moves.
Yeah.
They moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't long after this incident, right?
Actually, they ended up moving to New York after Joline's funeral, shortly after that.
Okay. And do you know the reasoning for that?
I really don't know. All I remember is my dad, we went to the attorney's office downtown, and my mom wanted to see us. So that was when we seen her, and it was supervised with her. And after that, they packed their stuff and left.
So your mom left with Bruce and Tina.
Yes.
And Bruce's kids?
Yes, all the kids.
So all of them are going to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that stayed here was you and your brother.
Yes.
With your dad.
Yes.
Shortly after Joline's funeral, that whole Grant Street house packs up and goes. They move to New York. Some people right away will say, well, that is an indicator of guilt. Sure, could be. They have ties to New York. So it wasn't like they're just moving somewhere that they didn't have ties to. But are they running away from the problem? Very good possibility. Maybe, as was reported in a newspaper, they were tired of the community placing blame on them. So they moved. But what happens once they get up to New York? The state police are not letting this go. They traveled to New York. They want to interview Bruce. They want to know, hey, we got more questions for you. So what does Bruce do? He takes the coward's way out. That's right, he commits. You know the word. I can't say it on YouTube here because they'll block me. He takes his own life. I hate to say that that's when the state police pretty much went like this. And they didn't quite yet because the pieces don't line up quite yet. But him taking his own life, that's pretty eyebrow raising. Okay? That he is responsible for this. Because just think about it. Why she was missing. Everything seems okay. But now that she's found, the state police follow them to New York, and then he does it. Almost like he can't get away from it. I understand where the police are coming from. I get it. But now, let's get to the evidence in this case. because this is going to tie back into this. And when the police finally go like this. Remember, she's abducted. There isn't really any evidence. At the body dump location, there's some beer bottles that I'm interested in. They're Bud Ice. And in one of the interviews, Steve says that they were drinking Bud Ice. Now, those bottles may not have nothing to do with the case. And they were tested, they were fingerprinted. I don't know about DNA, but they should be. But the only evidence that there is in this case seems to be a pillowcase that Joline was using, a pillow that had the case on it, and a comforter that she was using as a blanket. They were sent to the state police crime lab, and what did they find? They found semen. They did DNA tests. Who do you think that semen came back to? Bruce. Now, I will tell you that right there couple that with him taking his own life, made him suspect public enemy number one. He did it. Case closed. End of story, right? Not so fast, my friends. Why? Because everybody assumes that was Joline's room in her own home. Now remember, way back when we started this video, when I said, remember this is going to be important. Well, this is why. This wasn't Joline's home. This wasn't Joline's room. This wasn't Joline's blanket. This wasn't her bed. This wasn't her pillow. So everyone assumes Bruce's semen should not be there. I look at it and I read it and I'm like, why not? It's his house. It's his spare room. It's his blankets. It's his pillows. Whatever it is. So the district attorney at the time released a statement and said, we believe that Bruce Longnecker is responsible for this murder of Joline Witt, and in part because he took his own life, and we've now, remember, he took his life before this evidence results came back that showed his semen on this blanket and this pillow. We believe that, and this is from the paper, I'm not making this up, the district attorney said, and we believe that Bruce sexually assaulted Joline and smothered her or strangled her in that bed. That doesn't make sense, folks. Now, why doesn't it make sense? You're telling me that a grown man at age 31 who went to bed at 2 is going to wander over there at 3. Yes, very possible, if not probable. He could do that. But he's going to sexually assault the 10-year-old who is in bed with another girl. She's laying there with her cousin. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then he's going to strangle her, smother her, and then drive her body 20 miles away, dump her, come back, get in bed for only a couple of minutes before Linda awakes and says, hey, somebody's in the house. He comes down and starts making coffee. Just think about that for a minute. He's going to sexually assault where he ejaculates on a pillow, on the comforter. So not only does he sexually assault her, he kills her and strangles her right there in bed. Right next to his own daughter, who's 6 years old, that's laying there. And she's not going to wake up. She might not. 6-year-old kid, she might be passed out. She ain't waking up for nothing. But would he take that risk? That doesn't make sense to me. And just because his semen's there, it's not her home. She's visiting. She's in a spare bedroom. That's not her stuff. Now let me think about this for a second. What if that blanket was Jolene's? Because I didn't read that anywhere, but it just came to me, so I want to address it. Because children sometimes will bring their own blankets with them. Usually it's a blanket, it's not a comforter, but maybe it was. If that was her comforter, and it had Bruce's semen on it, I would have an issue. That would change things. But from my understanding, from the police reports, from interviewing Cass, that wasn't her blanket. It wasn't her comforter. So it doesn't bother me that Bruce's semen is there. Bruce's semen was found on her, yes, but it wasn't. So everybody made this guy out to be guilty in the past 25 years based off of that. And I don't. Let me tell you another reason why I don't feel that it was Bruce. The body dump location and how she was found. Remember, she was found naked. I have it written down here and I have a star next to it. There is no way that if Bruce killed Joline, that he took her out of that house naked. It's not happening. Think about it. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. You just got done murdering somebody, and cadaver dogs went through that house that morning, and they didn't hit her on anything. Now, granted, a body wasn't there, but a body doesn't need to be there. I used a cadaver dog one time where a guy hung himself 3 weeks earlier, and the cadaver dog alerted there. There was no body there, but the cadaver dog alerted. So the cadaver dog that was brought there would have alerted, should have alerted, if somebody was killed inside that house. That's number one. But the most important thing, he's not going to kill her, take her naked, carry her, a naked body out into the streets, place it into a vehicle. No, that doesn't happen. He's not going to redress her. I'm not saying that. If she was naked, she was in pajamas. He certainly, if he did it and he assaulted her, could have taken them off. But he's going to wrap her in a blanket. He's going to wrap her in something to take her out of the house, to transport her. Right? That's how I know she wasn't killed in that house. My opinion. So, now I'm eliminating Bruce. I'm not eliminating him 100%. Let's get that straight. Okay? He did some things, the coffee mainly, that bugs me. But that's not evidence. Okay? He wasn't seen driving on Sulphur Springs Road where Jolene's body was found at 3 a.m. There's nothing else. We've discredited the semen. And I just don't find that he would kill her in that bed, like has been alleged, with his own daughter laying next to her. It doesn't make sense. And then what? Come home and stage the doors being open? What I think is more probable, based on evidence. No, it's not physical. It's not direct evidence. It's circumstantial. It's indirect evidence. But nonetheless, it's evidence. Steve was seen by 3 people within a 1-block radius of that house. 2 of them within an hour of when she was kidnapped, when she was abducted. Not only did Kevin see it, and he was smart enough to write it down and follow it up, but John, the person he was talking to, saw it as well. So we know Kevin isn't making it up. Then he's seen coming back into town. He says that he fell asleep in his car after falling asleep on somebody's porch in Williamsport and then come back into town. But what Alan says later when they interview, remember I said there was people laying on the floor, sleeping at his trailer when they interview him. Alan came out and said, "Is Steve still out there?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" Well, he said he was sleeping out in his car. So why would he make that statement? So what Alan is saying is, hey, I came in, went to bed. Steve's going to sleep out in his car outside of my house. But according to both interviews, they never hooked back up after they left the bar. But let me tell you something that I failed to mention. Remember I said that when they first interviewed Alan, he was saying, hey, I was out with Monica, Bill, Dave. There was a bunch of people they were out with. Monica gives a statement to police. And remember, this ain't 10 years later. This is within that week. Yeah, I went out with them. We came back home. They were really drunk. Steve and Alan were really drunk. In fact, they were acting like horn dogs. That's important. And they said something. I was done drinking. And they said that they were going to Papa Gallo's bar. Papa Gallo's bar, huh? Is that the same bar that's exactly 1 block away from Joline Witt's residence? Is that the same bar that Officer Kevin and the bar manager John saw the brown Ford Fairmont that Steve drives? Is that the same place? Of course it is. Of course it is. So not only do they mention going to this bar, they are seen. At least one of them, the car, is seen. Now, for some of you conspiracy theorists, you can say, hey, the car was stolen and it was somebody. This is what I mean by indirect evidence. You have an independent witness, Monica, saying, hey, they were horny. They were all up on me. I shut them down. I was going home, going to bed. They wanted to keep drinking. They said they were going to Papa Gallo's. Well, when Alan and Steve are interviewed, they say nothing about Papa Gallo's. Why? Because they want to distance themselves from Muncy. They don't want people to know. They don't want law enforcement to know. But they went there. How do we know that? Not only did Monica mention it, but they're observed by the police officer and the bar manager at 3 o'clock. When Joline went missing between 2 and 4, that car is seen there. They're together. Come on, folks. Step back and just look at it with common sense. So, in the beginning of this video, you remember when I said that Alan's brother, I left him with that little seed. Not that seed. I planted a seed in his mind about Joline Witt and his reactions. Well, of course it's going to elicit a response, and it did. He now wanted to speak to me about what he knew about his brother committing or being involved in the murder of Joline Witt. He sent me a bunch of letters. Remember, the state police instructed me not to go interview him. So what I did was I arranged for him to, with his attorney, to come to the district attorney's office where we would discuss some things. And the state police would be there. But I would handle the interview. Very awkward. Not between me and David. I'd talk to him all day. It didn't bother me. It's the 3 state police troopers and their corporal who had already separated themselves as brothers in my eyes for the way they treated me in regards to this case. But now they're here watching, you know, me doing their interview, because not only am like, my focus is Joline, but they wanted confessions in regards to a bunch of burglaries that he had done. So I had to do that as well. And, hey, to get to the end result, whatever. But I want to talk about Joline. So during the course of the interview, David becomes very emotional. And he's got something, I'm not naive to the fact that he wants out of jail. He's in a lot of trouble. And he'll say anything that he can to get himself out of jail, right? That's why the state police didn't believe anything that he said. And I don't believe they believed anything he said about this case. I did. And I'll tell you why. One was his reaction when I first asked him about his brother and Joline. And then secondly, when we started talking, he described the death of his dad. And he became very emotional. And he said, I went to ask my brother if he went and said goodbye and kissed Dad goodbye. And he said no. And Dave asked his brother Alan, why not? And Alan said, flat out, because Joe's the last body I ever wanted to touch. He's like, say that again? He's like, Jolene's the last dead body I ever wanted to touch.
He wouldn't even like go in and see my dad's body, you know. And I said, you need to hug and kiss to ask goodbye. And he told me, you know, what I said. He was like, Joe's the last body I wanted to touch.
Now, Dave kind of knew in his words that Alan was involved somehow, because his demeanor, everything changed after Joline went missing. And in fact, I spoke to some prison inmates who also said, hey, he was in jail at that time when they found Joline's body, and when it came across the news reports, he acted different. Everyone turned and looked at him. Everyone in the prison knew that he did it. He was in there for some unrelated matter. And he began to shake and stammer and all this stuff. Listen, only guilty folks do that. Then David's mom died. David and Alan's mom. And he again said, hey, I asked Alan if he kissed mom goodbye. And he said no. And he's like, why? And he says, you know why. I told you before. Jojo, that's what he called her. Joe was the last body I ever wanted to touch. Then he went on to say how they placed her in the woods. He said they placed her in the woods. Now let me tell you why I believe. If he simply was trying to get out of jail and give false information, he would have simply said, hey, my brother told me he killed Joline Witt, and this is how he did it. But he didn't say that. Hey, all I know is he told me Joe's the last body that he wanted to touch, the last dead body he wanted to touch, and that they put her in the woods.
Wherever it happened at, and I don't know, kind of stuff like that, but I know that my brother told me, Alan told me, I don't know now, that they moved her and left her in the woods.
When he said they moved her?
Yeah, he didn't say, he just said we moved her and left her in the woods.
Well, why is that all that he says? Because that's the truth. If he was trying to get out of jail, he would have added to that. But he didn't, because that's all he knew. And nobody would take him seriously, except me. Because basically everybody thought he was a scumbag. Maybe he was. Doesn't mean he's lying. It made sense to me when I looked at the totality of all the evidence. It made sense to me. And you can take something from the statement they placed her in the woods, meaning two of them. And remember, 250 feet from that road. It's a long way for one person to drag a 120-pound body. 2 people makes it a little easier. 2 people that don't have a time crunch. Meaning, Bruce, if he's involved, he goes to bed at 2. She wakes up at 4 to find Joline missing. It's at least an hour drive there and back and to dispose of a body. So his window becomes now a little tighter. You can take an hour away from that. See what I'm saying? It becomes tight. Doable, no doubt. But it becomes tight. Steve and Alan don't have that problem. They went to the bar. Bar was closed. We're going to Papa Gallows. Maybe they didn't go to Papa Gallows, but their car was seen there. Steve's car was seen. And maybe they decided we're going to do something else. So I went back there because I wanted to see. I wanted to see what Kevin described in his police report. The vehicle pulling around and going down the alleyway to the house. Now, what did they do? He only saw one person in the car. Well, it's my belief that if Steve and Alan are responsible, that when Kevin saw and there was only one vehicle in the car, it's because Steve dropped off Alan at the 1 Grant Street address and circled the block, went up to Papa Gallows, saw the cop, slouched his head, didn't want to be seen, went behind the bar, went back down the alleyway to the Grant Street and picked up Joline and Alan. Joline might still be sleeping. Place her in the back seat. Nobody's going to see her. Now they are driving on Main Street. They pass in front of the cop again. This time he sees 2 people. Well, why 2? Because he just picked up Alan. Why doesn't he see Joline? She's laying in the back seat, asleep. Does he have a key to the house? Is that why? Does he know where the key's kept? I don't know. I don't know how he got in. Maybe the doors weren't locked. I go back to Kevin and people that say that he was involved. And he is placing the blame on Steve. I would say the same thing as I did David. Number 1, if he was going to lie, let's say he was involved, which he wasn't, but let's just play devil's advocate. He was involved, and he is making somebody out to be the scapegoat. And so he says, yeah, I saw this brown car. Why wouldn't he just say, I saw Steve in this car. I saw Steve and Alan and Joline in that car. And they went by me. I didn't know she was missing. I didn't think anything, but I saw her. That's what he would have done. He didn't do that because he's telling the truth. He had nothing to do with this. He was a good cop. I can't talk about any other case because I didn't see any other case that he worked. But this case, his initial reports, his follow-up interviews are great. He should have got a lot more credit than what he did. Maybe that's why his life has not turned out the best. Maybe that's why he's been arrested. Maybe he has some mental issues because of that. He shouldn't be shunned or made fun of or think, hey, he wasn't competent at the time. That's far from the truth. I didn't know him. But I can just say, through his police reports, he did an outstanding job, and he should be commended.
The house. Situated on the northwest corner of North Main and Grant Streets in Muncy, PA, is a Victorian-style home of Bruce and Christina Longnecker. This house is the house that 10-year-old Joline Witt was abducted from during the early morning hours of Sunday, 27 July 1997. Bruce and Tina lived in this residence with their 5 children. Linda Longnecker, Bruce's sister, also lives at this residence. She had previously separated from her common-law spouse, Lindsay. Linda and Lindsay have 3 children of their own: Lindsay, Cassie, Joline. Joline and Cassie were on a weekend visit with their mother, Linda, at the Grant Street house. After a day of going to yard sales, the entire family were up late, as was often the case, playing Scrabble. On the night of Joline's disappearance, there were 3 adults in the house: Bruce, Tina, and Linda, and 6 children. At approximately 02 in the morning, the Scrabble game had ended and the adults began to get around for bed. Bruce Jr. was sleeping in the first floor game room, Linda and Cassie in the first floor TV room on the couch and love seat. Upstairs, Kurt was in the bedroom with 2 beds, Bruce and Tina and Laura Dannon in the front bedroom, and Joline and Jeannie Lynn shared a queen-size bed in the middle bedroom. Joline was last seen by her Aunt Tina when she checked on Joline and Tina at approximately 02:30 hours.
And I believe all the police officers at that time in 1997, when this happened, 1998, should be commended. They did a great job. Listen, it isn't easy when you don't have evidence. Now, does the state police consider this case closed? I don't think so. Why else would a couple weeks ago they offer a reward for information relating to this murder? It's going to take a special person that doesn't listen to the outside influences. The old district attorney, who is now, I think, getting ready to be the new district attorney, coming back. You have to open up your eyes and just say, hey, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Hey, I understand. Bruce, good suspect. I just think there's more evidence pointing towards Alan and Steve. And David wasn't the only one who got me a confession. I had 2 other people call me up and say, hey, Alan himself confessed to me. Another person said, yeah, this person said Alan and Steve did it. Why? They were never reported in the news as being suspects or anything like that. None of this was. I bet you none of you guys never knew any of this stuff. And it might get me in some sort of hot water, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'm not releasing anything that wasn't already released other than the suspects, but I'm not saying their last name. But it is what it is. It's about Joline. It's about justice. It's about getting to the truth. You know? That's what it's about. I'm all about transparency. A lot of old school cops are not like that. Hush, hush. They don't want anybody to know anything. I'm just not like that. I've never been and never will be. Especially when a family member comes to me and they want answers.
Yeah, actually, we were watching the news and at my Graham's house, my dad's mom's house. So they were watching the news and, you know, they found a missing body and we seen the gurney go across the TV and they were just, you know, hoping that it wasn't her body.
It's alright. I get it. But That's how you found out, was through the news?
No, they didn't know at this point. They had to do, some DNA testing there to find out, because obviously her body laid in the woods for a long time, and it was decomposed, so it took a little bit. Actually, I was in school. I went to Curtin at the time. And the principal pulled us out of class, a little bit later. And as soon as that happened, I kind of knew what he was going to tell me. My dad was in the principal's office, and as soon as I see my dad, I start crying.
Okay.
Then he told us.
Well, I know that has to be a hard thing. I can't imagine. Like, Cass came to me wanting answers. I mean, you can see in this interview how emotional she is. It still affected her 20-something years later. She just wants to know what happened to her sister. And there's a lot of people that want to know. And I think there's two people who are still alive by the name of Alan and Steve that have the answers. They lying about their whereabouts. I mean, those are just facts. I could just state facts. Their interviews don't match up of what they did. The car was seen at 3 o'clock at Papa Gallo's, 1 block away. One of them, and then 2 people. Yes, Kevin can't identify, but he identified that car. And again, we deduce everything. Somebody from the outside that had to have had their sights on JoJo. Alan referring to her in the past tense, and she was only gone for a day. The confessions. It being greed, sex, or revenge, and we eliminated it was sex. Her not being taken out of that house naked. No way, no how. To me, it points, and I think you guys see it too, that it points to Alan and Steve. Both who have long criminal histories. Both who were very intoxicated that night by their own admissions. Both can't come up with their whereabouts really for the hours that Joline went missing. Put all that together. Steve not cooperating. Alan taking a polygraph test and failing it. Stephen refusing a polygraph test. Steve refusing DNA, blood and hair samples. Alan then refusing blood and hair samples and getting a lawyer. Steve having a hard time getting over the hump of letting police search their car. Eventually they did. They didn't find anything of relevance, but this was 3 or 4 weeks later. So police were on to them. It's not like I'm discovering this. Okay? They were suspects. I just don't think the public knew, because I think the public was being force-fed that it was Bruce. Hey, he's a good suspect. But maybe it's just a little convenient that he ended up taking his own life, so now we can kind of close the case and say, look, we don't have to worry about it. I don't like that. Maybe that's not why you did it. Maybe you really feel. But it doesn't make sense to me. When you come out and say she was strangled or smothered and sexually assaulted in that bed, doesn't make sense when another 6-year-old child's there. Now I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Let me go over some notes here because I always miss something. Bed sheet, comforter, pillowcase. We got the Alan's brother. Joe's the last dead body I want to touch. his comments about Joline in the past tense. One thing I didn't mention, Cass mentioned it in her interview. She recalls after Joline went missing that she went with Steve. Remember, Steve is part of that family. He's the uncle. And his wife, Ruthie. And she remembers driving with them. And where did they go? Where did Steve, who was driving, drive? Let's talk about where Joline's body was found. That's Sulphur Springs Road, correct?
Yes.
Had you been there before?
I was there on a car ride with Ruthie and Steve. And I don't remember if it was before or after Joline's death, but I do remember going up that road, just, on a ride through the, country or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I do remember being on that road.
Okay. Any other significance to that road, being related to Joline, of why her body would be found there?
No, I don't know, but I mean, obviously, it was found there, and then, you take me on a ride there, thinking I'm not going to remember anything because I'm just a little girl, or, so I think that's kind of
significant.
Yeah.
Sulphur Springs Road, where Joline's body was found. She remembers this. They didn't stop or anything that she remembers, but she remembers them driving on that road. That road is in the middle of nowhere, folks. I was just on it. It's a mountain, okay? There's nothing on that road. You're not going to the store. You're not going to use that road to get to your house. It's out of the way. Why does he go back on that road? Why does he drive Cass on that road? Maybe to find out whether her body was being found? Talked about Alan's jail demeanor when they found Joline's body. Steve being uncooperative. Alan failed the polygraph test. I went over all the red flags of Bruce. Again, she was found naked. She was not removed from that house naked. Her clothing that she left that house in those pajamas. That's important. Okay? Because they were never found. Which means the assault more than likely to me happened in a car. And probably there on Sulphur Springs. Or somewhere close. The clothes were discarded somewhere else. Again, it just, with those clothes not being found anywhere, it shows that she didn't come out of that house naked. Now, could Bruce have done something to her and taken her out of the house and then removed the clothes after she was already deceased? Yes, but that doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to me that she was removed from the house with the pajamas on, was assaulted in a car or in a vehicle, being then those clothes were removed, and then her body was discovered or discarded, and then the clothing was discarded somewhere else. That's what makes sense to me. Sexually motivated crime. There's no doubt about that. So, there you have it. There's my assessment of the Joline Witt case. Again, very hesitant. I was very hesitant to do it. It feels good to talk about it, to let other people know what I know. There's only a handful of people that know about Steve and Alan. A lot of people know about Bruce. But for some reason, Steve and Alan are just, they're not considered suspects anymore. And I don't know why. People tend to forget. I don't forget. There's just as much evidence, if not more, that Alan and Steve are responsible as there is Bruce. That's not disputed. Again, the semen stains in that room does not indicate anything.
But just because you find semen on a pillow doesn't mean, that she was being sexually, molested or anything like that.
Right. Let's make it clear that it wasn't her bedroom, right?
Right. And no, it wasn't her bedroom. It was his daughter's bedroom. Yes.
Okay. Now, I believe some people believe that Linda, Joline's mom, was involved some way or another. Could it be some sort of sexual trafficking? Sure. I can't discount that. It's possible that Linda maybe, quote unquote, pimped her out to Alan, but there's no evidence of that. Linda, according to everybody interviewed, including Cass, remembers her mom being hysterical. Now, maybe she would be a great actress. I just don't see that. I don't know. You have to account for the doors being open somehow. Either they didn't lock them, Alan had a key, somebody got in that house. But it looks like they maybe tried the side entrance, which is what you would try, right? If you're abducting somebody, you're not just going to walk right through the front door. You have to find a place in cover, to go in. Somewhere where the lights aren't shining, a street light. So try the side entrance, the Grant Street side. You open it up, you go in and you find the other door and that's locked. So you just leave that door open. Go to the back door, the patio door. That's open. You go through that. You walk up the steps. You abduct her. You come out and you go out the front door and you leave that open and you get in the car and you go. That accounts for all three doors being open. Maybe it didn't happen like that, but it explains, the door situation. Maybe they did lock the front door and the side door. Maybe they forgot to lock the patio door. And that's where entrance was made, and then out the front door, you just unlock it and go. And there was a treadmill there, so the door only opened up part way and there was a bang. And that's what woke Linda up. And she missed the abductor by seconds. And that's all it took. And it's a sexually motivated crime. And remember when Monica said they were acting like horn dogs. Now, am I digging a little bit too deep? I don't like to do that. Because all men in their 20s and 30s seem to act like horn dogs, right? Especially when they're drinking. But, maybe they decided, hey, I like JoJo. She'll go with us. Let's just get her. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. That's the evidence. That's the totality of this case. There you have it all. The new DA coming in January, I know he's passionate about these cases. Gail Matthews' case. He was there. He saw it. He was there for this. He's a good person to come back into office to look at these cases again. And I just hope that he doesn't put on blinders, and I don't think he will, and he'll do the right thing. Now, he may not like me for whatever reason. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. It doesn't matter about me. It's about these victims and the victims' families. So I hope, and I'm sure, that this video will make the rounds, and if he doesn't watch it, it'll get in his ear, and hopefully he has an open heart and an open mind, and will do the right thing. And look at Alan and Steve. They're still alive. Okay? They're living their life where Joline isn't. And there needs to be justice for JoJo. And I'll leave it at that. So with that said, thank you for watching Exit Unsolved. Until the next episode, Main's out.
Moves a thin ghost of music in the spinet. I cannot sail your seas, I cannot wander your hill lands, or your cornlands, or your valleys ever again, nor share the battle yonder, where the young knight, the broken squadron rallies. Only sit quiet, while my mind remembers the beauty of fire from the beauty of embers.